a devoted fan, and a plugged-in reporter. There is no better way to talk about hoops than that. Mia O'Brien and Mitch Northam have you covered for the W, the NCAA, Unrivaled, and anything else that involves a ball and a backboard. This is the Women's Basketball Podcast.
What's going on, party people? Welcome into this week's edition of the Women's Basketball Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things women's college hoops, WNBA, Unrivaled. We didn't forget about you this week, and much, much more. USA Today's Mitch Northam along for the ride, as he is each and every week here on OG Triangle Media. Although, Mitch, I will summon the words of our sometimes co-host, Lindsay Gibbs, on this podcast, who dubbed this Super Sunday. Yes, I know the Super Bowl is 1 week away. Yes, I know usually we tape this little podcast on Monday nights, but you could make the argument, and I heard it from multiple fans throughout the sport, throughout the course of the day, that Sunday, February 1st, the best slate of not only women's college basketball, everyone in the periphery of women's basketball, because we had Caitlin Clark on the NBA broadcast tonight as well, not to mention some pretty elite men's games as well. I know I was locked in. You were locked in a different dungeon. That wasn't my living room with 3 televisions. How are you on this fine Sunday evening, sir, post Kara Lawson beatdown of the Demon Deacons?
It also, Duke won by 36 today over Wake Forest. We're taping this on a Sunday. And Kara Lawson was pissed in the press conference. She was like, we didn't play well in the second half. I'm like, Kara, you won by 36. But Duke has won 13 in a row now. But, to borrow, I don't think it quite lives up to this, but we have had some upsets this week, and I think that's going to shake up the AP Top 25 poll. Our friends at the Shutdown Fullcast like to call, when multiple ranked teams get upset, Blood Week. I don't think we quite had that, although it's been a bloody 2 weeks for our Maryland Terrapins, who we will talk about.
They are included in this week's starting 5. And speaking of Kara Lawson upset with her team despite a double-digit victory, we begin with another coach who was upset with his team despite a double-digit victory. Not just a 30-point win, Mitch, for the UConn Huskies, the number 1 team in the land. Yes, Husky fans, it's finally time to talk about UConn on this podcast. Their 18th straight win by 25 points or more. That is the most by any team in the last 25 years in college basketball. Final score, UConn 96, Tennessee 66. But because, Mitch, this was a tie at half at 42, Gino Auriemma telling reporters post-game that, quote, had it been a 30-point lead at half, I would have been really, really disappointed, because you play these games to be really tested, to find out a little bit about what your team is made of. In that respect, it served its purpose, because apparently he went off on the Huskies at halftime. And while he believes the only player that listened was Sarah Strong, they obviously responded in the second half up in Hartford, Connecticut, Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. I think he said something to the effect of, we have one player who's smart on this team, and that's Sarah Strong.
Yes.
He also said something like, we played 3 games. We played the first quarter, kind of, sort of. We played the second quarter, and then we played the second half. But it was pretty satisfying, pretty rewarding. I know they're really, really happy. Unconfirmed if his rants about Connecticut pizza continued, but he has apparently been raging against that as well. UConn wins comfortably over the Lady Vols, their longtime rival. You might remember Tennessee was the last team to beat UConn last season, before the Huskies went on a long winning streak that culminated in Gino Auriemma's 12th national championship. That was not going to happen today. UConn outscores Tennessee 29-11 in the third quarter, 25-13 in the fourth, and kind of runs away with this one. Pretty sloppy game for Tennessee in the second half. UConn is really, really good, and they're going to finish the regular season undefeated. At this point, I don't really have any big takes about UConn. I was saying, before we hopped on and started recording, I don't really have a reason to watch this team for the rest of the regular season and probably through the Big East tournament, because they're not going to play anybody that's going to tell me anything new about them. The Big East is probably going to get 1, maybe 2 more teams in the tournament besides UConn. I think Villanova's in good position, and we'll see what happens with Seton Hall. But UConn has beaten both of those teams comfortably this season. I don't see them getting tested. Probably not until we get to the Sweet 16 Elite 8 round again, and they run up against, I don't know, maybe Michigan or somebody like that again. This UConn team is really, really good. They got Sarah Strong. We know that. Best player in the country. I'm just not sure what else there is to say about them at this point and what else we can learn about them. I will say I have a take.
Okay, so you do have a take about UConn, because it should be noted for the UConn fans out there who are upset that we never talk about them on the Women's Basketball Podcast. It's exactly for the reasons that Mitch outlined, but we do have a take. Let's hear it.
Well, it's kind of less about UConn and more about this other team.
Oh.
I think if UCLA continues to run the table in the Big Ten, they should get the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, regardless of UConn being undefeated. UCLA beat Iowa today comfortably by double digits. UCLA now has 12 quad 1 wins, and they're going to have the opportunity to get a couple more because the Big Ten is really tough, and the Big Ten is going to get double-digit teams into the NCAA tournament, and the Big East is not. And the Big East is soft and overall a pretty weak conference. Like, I think most people would agree with me that, like, if you take UConn out of the Big East, it's the A-10, right? Like,
maybe even less than that, because the A-10 may get multiple teams into the tournament and the Big East may not.
Maybe so. Like I said before, like Villanova's probably going to get in. Seton Hall, we'll see what happens. You look at the A-10, like Richmond and Rhode Island are both in good shape to get at large bids if they keep doing what they're supposed to do. And George Mason is 10-0 in league play, and they might go back to the tournament. So, UCLA right now, like I said, 11 quad 1 wins. UConn has 5, and I think if you look at their schedule based on the quads and the net and stuff like that, they might have the opportunity to get like 2 or 3 more if they play Villanova in the Big East tournament. So if UCLA is going to have perhaps triple the amount of quad 1 wins that UConn does, I don't know, man. Like, I think they should probably get the number 1 overall seed. Now, is that a big deal this year? Because there's not a Northeast site for the Sweet 16 Elite 8 round. So, like, UConn is not really going to have a home court advantage in Sacramento or Fort Worth. Probably not a big deal. But I think UCLA, like, they would probably like to play in Sacramento, and they should get the opportunity to choose to play in Sacramento. I think they should be the number 1 overall seed if they continue to run the Big Ten.
First time that the Huskies have trailed in the second quarter of a game this entire season. Came in this 96-66 win over Tennessee. Don't worry, Vols fans, we're not done with you either. We're going to circle back to you a little bit later. Shocker as part of Beef of the Week. And I think it should be noted, before we move on to number 2 in this week's starting 5, yes, flowers to UCLA. Sure, they'll also come up at some point later in this pod. But I do want to also shout out the supporting cast, because yes, everyone wants to talk about how this game was AZ Fudd 7, Tennessee 0 at the onset. Sure. And AZ Fudd finishes with, 27 points. Like, credit to her. Sarah Strong, 26 points. I get it. But I really was impressed today, Mitch, with the supporting cast. Ashlyn Shade, Sarah Williams. I thought Kaylee Heckle is someone who we've been waiting to really emerge. She only had 8 points, but they were pretty critical 8 points in that sequence where UConn really pulled away for good in the second half of ball games. I want to credit every announcer that calls a UConn game, despite the fact that they are not in the top 10 in terms of teams that are lighting up the ratings these days, because Ashlyn Shade and Kaylee Heckle have such similar hair structure that to try to figure out which one is which at times when you're far away. I would just like to commend every broadcaster who has called a UConn game this year, because there were moments where I was like, oh no, that's Heckle. Nope, that's Shade. So just want to shout out the broadcasters. But also, I thought that those 2 ladies on the floor were pretty good today too.
Also, Ali Ziebel, freshman, who on Wednesday when UConn was out had like 6 players out with various injuries or illnesses or what have you. Freshman comes off the bench, scores 34 points, hits 10 3-pointers, lights Xavier up. Now, here's the thing. Even if she didn't do that, UConn would have still won by like 30-something points, because Xavier is terrible, and the final score was 97-39. So you take her 34 points out, you can do the math. Again, Big East, not good.
But you also take her 10 points out today, and UConn still wins by 20 because Tennessee decided to not show up in the first quarter despite a furious push in the second. Again, we're going to circle back to Killa Kim's squad, rest assured, folks. We continue, though, in the starting five to number 2. The best game that I saw today. Final score in OT, the Michigan Wolverines 94, the Michigan State Spartans 91. This game had everything. It was as back and forth, trading buckets as it gets. Shout out to Kylie Casper and Sid Parrish of Indiana Acclaim. What a year for Indiana in 2026. On the call on FS1. This one was elite. I have a new favorite player in the Big Ten. Sorry to my folks out in Iowa City. I love the story of Kennedy Blair. No idea that she was the bus driver of this Michigan State team all along, despite the fact that she followed Robin, the head coach, to Bowling Green, was initially committed to Bowling Green, suffers an injury, redshirts her first season in East Lansing. Last year was not a member of the rotation. Now she is the undisputed heart of this squad. 21 points in 41 minutes of play, 10 boards, 4 assists. Yeah, she had 7 turnovers that proved a little costly there towards the end. Was really impressed by her. Sotelo, the forward, also a great productive day for her. This is a Michigan State team that I think proved a lot of people that, while yes, they are probably a year away from being in that upper echelon of the Big Ten alongside Michigan, who of course pushed UConn to the brink in the opening month of the non-conference portion of the regular season. I was impressed with Michigan State's fight. This obviously took place at the Breslin Center in East Lansing. I think that was a big factor in this one. Michigan State actually had a half-court heave that if it had gone in, and it did bounce on top of the rim, they would have won this game in regulation and it wouldn't have gone to OT. But in OT, the dominant 3 sophomores that we've talked about all season long for Michigan certainly came to play. Olivia Olson comes alive, even though she fouled out in the OT, 23 points. And then Mila Holloway had a breakout 26-point performance that I didn't know was her career high, but she seemingly every time they needed a bucket throughout the course of this one, Mitch, found a way to get to the rack and just slice and bake and shimmy her way through the lane. And I was really impressed with the play of this young Michigan team that we have to keep in perspective. They are still young, just like, despite getting mollywopped by UCLA today, we keep in perspective. Iowa, outside of Hannah Stolke and Kylie Feuerbach, they're still young. And the same can be said for the Wolverines.
Yeah, I think Michigan is really, really good. And if the bracket breaks the right way, they can make the Final Four. Like, we saw this team push UConn to the brink in November, like you mentioned. They've played really, really well in the Big Ten so far. They have those 3 awesome sophomores. I was watching kind of the end of this game a little bit over the shoulder of Marissa Sisk, who is a big Michigan fan, while we were waiting for the Duke-Wake Forest press conference to start. And so I just caught a little bit of the end of this game, but really impressive road win for the Wolverines to get this done in East Lansing. And, yeah, I think they're probably going to be like a number 2 seed in the tournament. But I don't think they should be scared of anyone once they get into March Madness. Like, this is a team capable of making the Final Four.
And it appears that the head coach of the Michigan State Spartans, one Robin Freilich, is joining your cause, Mitch, to say that UCLA, perhaps, she didn't go out of her way and say that the Bruins should be the number 1 seed, but she did say in the postgame, women's basketball has never been better. I keep saying it. Our league, the Big Ten, has never been better. The rivalries have never been better. Women's basketball has never been better. The Big Ten, the best conference in all of women's basketball. Sid Parrish said it on the broadcast as well. Let's continue with number 3 in this week's starting 5, the best games or teams that we saw this week in the world of women's hoops. Oh, boy. It's time to talk about Maryland.
Yeah, it's been a rough go of it lately for the Terps. I think that the injuries are finally culminating and catching up with them. They've had a rough stretch here lately. I believe their loss on Saturday to Oregon was their 4th in a row. Now, I will say all those teams that they lost to are really good teams. Even Oregon. Oregon is a team that is going to make the NCAA tournament. Those other teams, they lost at UCLA. They lost at home to Iowa in overtime. They lost to Washington this past week on Wednesday. But, I look at this Oregon box score here, and, Alucci is doing her thing, getting 27 points, and you got 17 from Addie Mack, and then not really much else across the board. And I think They would like to see a little bit more out of Yarden Garzon, who had 3
Speaking of Indiana,
3 points in 38 minutes. Like, you need more from her. I mean, she came into Maryland, last offseason, kind of touted as, one of the premier like 3-and-D kind of wings. And we're not really seeing the offense from her lately. Sailor Poffenbarger, another one, 2 points in 28 minutes. They kind of just need the rest of their supporting cast to step up. But Maryland, lots and lots of injuries this year. It's a bummer to not see what this team would look like with, Kayleen Smeichel and Bree McDaniel on it, right? But this is a tough stretch they're in the Big Ten right now. They're 5-6 in Big Ten play, but they're going to have to play at Michigan State next. But then they got Nebraska. Nebraska's okay.
I was going to say, Nebraska gave Ohio State a nice little run for the money today. Shout out to Amy and the crew out in Lincoln. I was impressed with the performance.
But then they got a couple circle wins coming up. Like, they're going to play Penn State, Purdue, Northwestern. But they also got road games against Ohio State and Michigan in there. So I think Maryland at this point, like, I had them penciled in, as a top 16 seed. I think that's what they're trying to protect right now. Like, they're kind of in real time, like, switching spots with Duke. Like, I think Duke is in the top 16 now, which, as we know, gets you hosting rights for the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. Maryland has to figure it out. I trust that Brenda Freeze will. It wouldn't be a surprise, even with all these injuries, to see them, make the Sweet 16 and, get it together a little bit.
The next two teams that round out this week's starting five are in line to potentially host in the first 16 seeds in the NCAA tournament field. At number 4 in this week's starting five, it's the LSU Tigers. Final score in Baton Rouge, 103-63. Number 6 LSU prevails handily over number 24 Alabama, the alma mater of one Sarah Ashley Baller, friend of the pod, and of course producer Dimitri, also I don't know if he's a proud alum. Point being, Mitch, LSU, while we want to talk about their soft non-conference schedule, while we want to talk about that 2-game losing streak they had at the hands of a top 15 ranked Kentucky and a top 15 ranked Vanderbilt, this is an LSU team that not only continues to win, they have not scored less than 70 points in a win this entire season. As a matter of fact, they have only scored less than 70 points once this year, and that was in the 65-61 loss to Vanderbilt. And I'm not saying that offense is going to win you a championship, because historically speaking, it's just going to sell tickets, and maybe that's all that Kim Mulkey wants. But at the same time, this is an LSU team that there are a lot of ways for them to win on the offensive end of the floor. I was extremely encouraged in watching this game today with how well they operate in the half-court set. This is not just 3 high-flying guards getting up and down the floor, and you got Kate Koval to provide a little bit of an interior presence and someone who can protect the rim. This is a team that can operate and run an offense in the half-court. They are a team that, yes, can also beat you on the fast break, but it's a team that can win with the 3. They can win by pounding inside. It's been really impressive to see, because I do think, and I don't want to make the comparison, even though they did play this school, and sorry to really, add salt to the wound for poor producer Dimitri here, but the men's team for Alabama, what has been the question mark with them, besides the fact that they have a player who played in the NBA currently on their roster? The question with Nate Oates' men's Alabama team has been, they are going to outscore you, but can they actually play defense? And while I don't know if we have the answer to that thoroughly, the men's Alabama team, they showed the graphic today during the Florida game, 53% of their shots come courtesy of the 3, and that's a reason why they're averaging close to 90 points per contest. With LSU, it's not because of the 3 ball. That's what's so impressive to me with Flau'jae Johnson, what Kim Mulkey and friends have been able to do in Louisiana, because they're getting everyone involved, and it's fun to watch, which I appreciate. They did shoot 48% from 3 today, but I don't think that they have to have the 3 going in order to continue to pull out victories.
I think the thing that stood out for me for LSU is how deep they are. And I think that's one of the reasons why they can score so many points and they can run you out of the gym, is because they can keep your Jada Richards and Michaela Williams and Flau'jae Johnsons fresh because of the talent that they have on the bench. They have 9 players right now averaging more than 10 minutes per game. In this win over Alabama, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players score at least 8 points. That's really good depth. And we've talked about how important depth is with some other teams this season, like the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who Kate Koval used to play for. But, I think like you look at the metrics and stuff, LSU is 9th nationally in three-point shooting percentage, 37.8. They're 3rd in effective field goal percentage. They're 3rd in points per scoring attempt, 3rd in points per play. Like, the offense is really, really good. The defense is good too, though. Like they're 4th nationally in opponent shooting percentage, 33.7. So, everything is kind of coming together right now for LSU. They got, some tough games coming up where we're going to learn a little bit more about them. They got to play at Texas. That's one of their teams they played twice in SEC play this year. They got their big game at home against South Carolina coming up on Valentine's Day. They got to go to Ole Miss, and they got to host Tennessee. So a couple of tough games, down the stretch here in February before we get to the SEC tournament in Greenville.
And, of course, Texas is renowned for their defense. They lead the SEC, forcing 23.8 turnovers per contest. And oh my, Mitch, will you look at who is number 2 in forcing turnovers in the SEC? That would be Kim Mulkey's Tigers, who come in forcing 22.7 turnovers per game. And yes, I know that the soft non-conference is certainly inflating that number, but I've been impressed on the defensive end of the floor and what they've been able to do to then translate that to offense, not just shooting, living, and dying by the 3 ball. I said our final 2 teams in tonight's starting 5 had a chance to host in the NCAA tournament. And if we had told you back in October that Texas Tech would be among the top 16 seeds in the NCAA tournament field, Mitch, oh boy, I know what your answer would be. I'm curious what the listener's answer would be, but just spell it out for everyone.
Yeah, this win over TCU they got today on Sunday, 62-60, I think is kind of like a proof of legitimacy win for them. Like they had that great winning streak to start the season. Then they went on the stretch where they lost 3 or 4 games, lost to Kansas State and BYU and Iowa State. But beating TCU, who is the highest ranked Big 12 team in the country, that's a really good win for them. That's their 3rd Quad 1 win of the season. They are now 3-0 in Quad 1 games. You get 28 points off the bench from Snudda Collins. It's a really important win for them in terms of NCAA tournament resume. They're definitely going to go dancing in March. That's not a question. Now it's a question of, are you good enough to get into that top 16 range? I think this maybe puts them back in the conversation, depending on how some other things shake out. But yeah, Texas Tech is legit good this year. Like this isn't, fake good. This isn't, you just played a soft non-conference slate. Like they can beat some teams. They got something cooking there.
Which brings us to our favorite conference, because it is the conference of chaos in women's basketball in 2026. For those of you keeping score at home, even after this Texas Tech win over the Horned Frogs, TCU remains in a tie for 1st in the Big 12 standings, with Baylor, who also lost today to the Greenbrier 5, even though they no longer play with 5 players. But I'm still going to continue to call West Virginia the Greenbrier 5 for the rest of the season. Texas Tech and West Virginia a half game behind those 2 squads that they both respectively lost to today. And here's where it gets interesting. OK State, one of our trendy preseason picks. Mm-hmm. They are 1 game back of the lead in the Big 12. Colorado, 2 games back alongside Utah. Iowa State, once upon a time, started the season 14-0. Well, they're now 18 and 6, excuse me. Or 18 and, yeah, I am reading. No, 18 and 5. I'm confusing numbers. It's all good.
Math.
Don't worry, Cyclones. You're getting back on track. 18 and 5 because of that 5-game losing streak. They are 2.5 games back, followed by BYU, Kansas State, the most mercurial team in all of women's basketball, Arizona State, who was also among the last unbeatens in the land once upon a time, all 3 games back of the conference lead with a month plus still to play. It's going to be a fun one down the stretch in the Big 12, to be fair, folks.
And I mean, right now, like the NCAA tournament bubble, when you look at, last 4 in, first 4 out, it's basically populated by Big 12 and ACZ teams. The Big 12, it's like Arizona State and BYU and Utah kind of all jockeying for position to try to get into the tournament field. I think Iowa State, this little run that they've gone on recently where they've won 4 in a row. I think they're back, off the bubble now and safely in the field. Audie Crook seems to have, things cooking again, and Jada Williams as well. So, but yeah, the Big 12, very messy conference. That's going to be a conference tournament that's going to be really interesting to watch.
But as our friends at NFL Daily, shout out to Jordan Rodriguez and Greg Rosenthal, like to say, sometimes we like the messy, fun teams, especially on podcasts like this one, the Women's Basketball Podcast. Absolutely. We also like beef on this podcast, which brings us to
Pure Beef.
Mitch, I'm not going to lie. The last few weeks, we play our wonderful liner from our friends at AuditoryFX.com. By the way, you can make your podcast sound bigger and more professional like ours with packages starting as low as $19.99 with AuditoryFX.com. All the audio tools you need to take your show to the next level, AuditoryFX.com. We haven't had a lot of beef lately. We've kind of been searching for it. We went through a nice stretch there where we had Flaugier beefing with Carol Lawson. We had Janiyah Barker beefing with Corey Close. All these reunions and the handshake lines. We haven't had some pure, unfiltered beef in some time, but we have some this week. And it comes from Janiyah Barker's Lady Vols, who, yes, lost today, 96-66, their second straight L. But Mitch, the losing on the court, it's kind of related to this week's beef. Would you like to do the honors of explaining to the folks at home why the Lady Vols of Tennessee and our friend Killa Kim Caldwell are this week's beef of the week?
Do we want to start with the Mississippi State game?
Yes. Well, okay. We have to start with shoot around of the Mississippi State game.
Okay. So Tennessee loses to Mississippi State on Thursday night, 77-62 in Knoxville. I believe that was the first ranked road win for Sam Purcell's Mississippi State Bulldogs since 2020. So
that's
good win
correct.
for them. They're another team that's, fighting to stay on the right side of the bubble. Kim Caldwell, this is her opening statement. I think it was pretty clear from the very beginning of the game. I knew in shoot around that it was going to be bad. It was going to be ugly. I didn't think it was going to be that ugly. They outworked us. They out-toughed us start to finish. Follow-up question. What made you think that was going to happen? I think the prep leading up, people not wanting to play, not listening, having to go back to repeating ourselves and being late to warm-ups. So things like that were just kind of a slap in the face. This was a game I knew we really needed to win. We talked about that. We talked about it's SEC night. You have to show up every single night and play. And I think their heads got a little bit big. They thought they beat them once and they were going to walk in and beat them again. And they put it right to us. So practices, accountability, showing up, not good. Not good for Tennessee right now.
Late to shoot around? Like, what are we doing here?
I've never heard of that. As I reference often on this podcast, I spent a season with, the North Carolina Tar Heels, which, by the way, got my book edits back this weekend and went through those. Might have an update for everybody shortly. And so I went to a lot of Carolina shoot-arounds at home, on the road. No one was ever late to shoot around. No one was ever – the entire team basically showed up together. Some players would show up early to get extra shots and all that. I've never heard of players being late to shoot around, which shoot around, for folks who might not know, is kind of just like basically a practice that you have either the morning of the game, a few hours before, or if you're playing early in the day, maybe it's the night before. And you're kind of just, it is a practice, but it's not, super intense. You're mostly kind of going through walkthroughs and the scout and like, okay, they're going to show us this. And this is how we need to respond to that. And you kind of run through that play a couple times and whatever, usually an hour and a half, something like that. So I thought that was wild that, not only did Tennessee's players show up late to that, but then Kim Caldwell kind of, I feel like maybe using the media a little bit to send a message to her players. I'm sure she also told them to their face, like, hey, this is not okay. But yeah, that's not good. It's not a good sign for the Lady Vols, who have now lost 2 in a row. And
they came into that game, Mitch, in first place in the SEC. And so that's where I do think that initially she said that to the reporter to send the message. I 100% agree, because Tennessee came in at that point. They were 6-0 in the SEC. They were 14-3 overall. Like, respect. I get it. That's coach speak, whatever. But then it was kind of like, you let the genie out of the bottle, because then it's become like this witch hunt of like, well, which players were late? And then people are debating online, is it because they make so much money in NIL, they feel like they can push Kim around? And is this a sign of the times? And of course, we had that discourse then discussed at length on the timeline. And what was funny was then 3 days later, her counterpart and the tenured and veteran on the other side, on the men's side, and Rick Barnes, made a reference in the post-game presser.
I saw that.
Sometimes I feel like my guys are gambling on the games. And then he literally hears himself say, and he like grabs his face and he's like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. Now I'm going to incite an NCAA investigation. So maybe, something in the water up there on Rocky Top. They had a lot of snow. I hope everybody listening in Tennessee is doing okay. Everybody in that neck of the woods, your neck of the woods as well in Carolina, Mitch. So maybe the melted snow and ice somehow got into some people's drinks or something, because, yikes! Yeah, not a good week for PR for Mike White's brother and the crew up there in Tennessee.
Yeah, a couple more highlights from Kim Caldwell's press conference. We're not locked in. We're not focused. Effort. I just don't think we got out there. And I think the main thing is we just got beasted on the inside. Final question: how do you make sure this doesn't snowball? It very well could. They have to make up their mind and fix it. We've been harping about rebounds. And until they see it's a problem and they see it hurts us, it's going to continue to hurt us. And if she felt like the team ever gave up, I don't know that we gave up. I don't think we ever showed up. Woof. Not good.
This was prior, well. Folks, this was prior to them getting beat by 30 against the UConn Huskies, by the way. Yeah. This was the game prior, where they did get out rebounded 39-30. Look, it's UConn. We already discussed it. We led the pod with it. They were never going to win that game. Sorry. And I think that Tennessee's length is going to give teams problems down the home stretch of the regular season and into the SEC tournament and into the NCAA tournament. They're not missing the tournament, folks, unless something disastrous happens and this truly snowballs into another polar vortex through the middle part of the country. It's not going to happen. They're going to be in the tournament field. Now, with that said, I was impressed in the second quarter by Tennessee and the fight they showed down 16, having this avalanche of AZ Fudd and Sarah Strong and a home crowd atmosphere in Hartford, Connecticut, just absolutely palpitating. And so I thought at first, I was like, okay, they're not going to win this game, but at least if they keep it close, and the fact that it was tied at half, I was like, that's a great coaching job by Kim, because they did answer the bell. They did hear what she said, even if they didn't show up in the first quarter of Sunday's game. At the very least, I was like, okay, cool. But then they let it get away in the second half, and maybe that's more about UConn than it is Tennessee. But I don't know where the road goes from here. Like I said, they're going to make the tournament. I'm not going to question that. But where they go from here, because here's the upcoming schedule, Mitch. Home against a upstart Georgia team that's also right now in the NCAA tournament field. They're going to get up for that one. Then you get South Carolina. Then you get Missouri, okay, and then you got to host Texas. Oh, and then Ole Miss, another team who we don't know what day of the week. I
believe that game is going to be played on a Tuesday.
Yes, because that was the one that was snowed out. So, look, they've got a great opportunity with 3 of their next 4 against top 25 teams, but it's interesting to me, and I don't want to put so much of it on, well, they don't have a bus driver because they're so focused on creating depth. And Janiah Barker is de facto the marquee player on this roster. And I thought she looked like the best player on the floor for the Vols at times on Sunday. I don't know if you need a bus driver. I mean, we're in the same podcast network as Ovius and Giglio. We're going to tell you the same as the OGs. Who is the leader of this team? Because whoever that leader is, they need to step up on the floor and they need to step up off the floor as well, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with Tennessee. I think last year and this year, they've never really had that one go-to player. I think some Vols fans maybe want it to be Talasia Cooper. I think maybe now they're hoping it can be Mia Paldo, the freshman. Mm-hmm. But, it's a very deep team. This is just how Kim Caldwell teams play. The rotations in and out, the hockey substitutes. We want to get up and down the floor and jack up shots and the whole thing. They don't really, it's kind of like we've talked about with NC State. It's a by committee team. It's a little bit of your turn, my turn. Now we have some teams this year who are doing okay. and doing really well with not having like that number one go-to scoring option. Duke and Louisville are two of those teams where they don't have that, for lack of a better term, bus driver, but they play like a team. And like when one player is cooking, everybody else makes sure that they get the ball. Jeff Walls has talked about this a lot this year. They're really getting it done by committee, and it's working for them. And you kind of can see when you watch and the body language and just how they play, like everybody is bought in. I'm not really sure we're seeing that from Tennessee.
The good news for me, maybe not for the listeners of this podcast, is that as we segue to our somewhat main event in which we revisit our preseason Final Four predictions, we cannot find our Final Four predictions, our way too early Final Four predictions from last April, in which we know for a fact that I picked Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee's not making the Final Four, Mitch. I regret to inform you, unless something dramatically shifts the other way, not in the way of the snowball rolling and turning into an avalanche of polar vortex proportions. But the good news is that for me, we don't know where our fours for that. If anybody can go back in the archives and find it and you want to comment it, like by all means, here for it. Also subscribe while you're with us here on the Women's Basketball Podcast to our channel, as well as the OG Triangle Media YouTube channel and podcast network. So instead, as we revisit our predictions for who would make the Final Four, because it is February 1st, we are approaching the home stretch of the regular season. The NCAA tournament is about a month and a half out. We will revisit our picks that we made back in October. And so I say to you, Mitch, your Final Four teams that you predicted back in October: UConn, LSU, UCLA, and Duke. My four teams: UConn, LSU, Maryland, and South Carolina. We are going to now give who we believe on February 1st the Final Four teams in the NCAA tournament will be come the first weekend of April. Mitch Northam, you have the floor. Are you adding, subtracting, or rolling with the same four squads?
So first off, here's my notepad where I did my bracketology last week at USA Today.
USA Today.
So I do just at USA Today, if you go to the website and read, I do basically a top 16 projection, and then I do a bubble watch. But this past week, I did fill out a full bracket here on my yellow pad that I have. So I'm kind of going off of that and like what the bracket may look like. So I'm going to stick with UCLA and UConn. I think you can pencil those two teams into Phoenix. The questions I have are with the other two number one seeds, South Carolina and Texas. I think we've seen that those two teams can get beat. Texas in particular, I think if they run up against a team that is really good at making three-pointers, that's going to be a problem for them. South Carolina, I think they can make the Final Four, but I don't think I'm going to pick them. So I'm going to go with UConn, UCLA, Louisville.
Whoa!
And Michigan.
Wow. Okay. Well, Michigan, I was also going to take. So, okay, I'll pick somebody else then. All right. Tell us what you're going back to the well with Jeff Walls, and we got a newcomer in the sensational sophomores with KAB up in Ann Arbor. What's up? Why are we rolling with those two, Mitch?
I just think kind of like given the data that we've been presented with this season, what we've seen with our own eyeballs, I think Louisville is just a really, really good team. And I think, like I just said, in the previous segment, they have a lot of pieces. They have a lot of players who can go off, and it's a team that isn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, they're not selfish. It's not, you don't have a superstar who like has to take 20 shots a game. We've seen Raina Scott do it. We've seen Amari Berry do it. We've seen Tajiana Roberts do it. We've seen Laura Ziegler do it. Like, they're just deep and they have a lot of pieces. And by the way, this Louisville team, basically lost to South Carolina at the buzzer in December. So, like, if they get matched up against South Carolina in the tournament and get a second crack at the Gamecocks, I think Jeff Walsh is a really, really good coach. And I kind of think he might be able to cook up something. And then Michigan, for all the other, when we talked about them earlier, that's a team that we saw take UConn to the brink. And that's a team that I think can beat anyone on the right night. And I think if the bracket breaks the right way, I think if they or Louisville end up in Texas's region and we get an Elite Eight matchup, I like Louisville or Michigan in that game.
For the record, I too was going to pick Michigan, but for the sake of bringing in other teams into this exercise and to exposing the listener to some other contenders for the national title come April, I will bring someone else into the equation, a team you just referenced. Mitch, remind the folks, where are the two sites for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games this year?
Sacramento and Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay, so if the current rankings were to hold, independent of whether or not they win the SEC title or not, Texas is most likely going to be in Fort Worth. And so I will subtract South Carolina from my Final Four and add Texas into the field. Part of that is because one game we did not discuss from Sunday's slate that I think was an absolute statement dub was the Red River showdown between Oklahoma and Texas. Thank you, Jenny Baranchik and friends. You made some money for Mitch and making money with Mitch. We will get to the picks for next week here momentarily. But
great teams covered.
They covered the 10.5 point spread. It did not look like they were going to cover that 10.5 point spread in the first half, my friends. It looked like they were going to get boat raced worse than Tennessee, worse than Iowa. It just truly looked like Texas was playing a different sport. And that is where I do think while their brand of basketball can be exploited, I do think the steady hand, the constant defense, they are a team that I think could handle Michigan's press in a way that we saw Michigan State respond to it today. And that's a younger squad. I think that when you've got Madison Booker, when you've got just a veteran point guard like Texas does and Rory Harmon, I think they can handle the press of Michigan. I think they can handle the veteran Jeff Walls of Louisville if they were to be matched up with them. So I'm going to say, for argument's sake, I will put Texas there ahead of South Carolina because, as we've discussed, while we believe South Carolina could have the best starting five in the sport right now, they do not have the depth to make it through an NCAA tournament field unscathed, especially when you're going up against the post play of a Lauren Betts or a Madison Booker and friends, for that matter, in Austin, where you need to have waves of post players because when they get into foul trouble, good luck. You're going to end up playing your freshmen or your bench warmers, your 9th, 10th, 11th girl on the team. So Texas, we're going to take South Carolina out of my initial 4 from back in October. We put Texas in. I'm keeping UConn in. I'm keeping LSU in. I don't think LSU makes it to the national title game, but I will keep LSU in for now, just because I do think the defense is much improved from a season ago. And I do think they, while it's maybe not the signature strength of Kim Mulkey's team, she did go into the portal and do what Niele Ivey did not. And not only secure the right to play ball, but she went out and she said, all right, like, I'm not going to fool around like last year with, well, I have Anissa Morrow and you don't. Like, you lost Angel Reese. You have to go get post players. You cannot just rely on your backcourt and Anissa Morrow. And to her credit, Kim did not. She also really clearly placed an emphasis on getting 3-and-D wings. And those young players, as we already alluded to, are producing. So I'm keeping LSU. I'm keeping UConn for obvious reasons. And I, too, will say I am sorry to Corey Close, our James Franklin of women's basketball. I was wrong. UCLA is one of the best four best teams in the country. Yeah. They're one of the 2 best teams in the country right now. I think that what surprised me most in UConn's dominating win on Sunday over Iowa was not just the play of Lauren Betts, because I know Lauren Betts is good, like water is wet. But I would like to introduce a new character into the women's basketball podcast universe. That character, her real name is Angela I'm going to butcher it. Dugalic. Yes. Can you say it, Mitch?
Dugalic?
Dugalic. Thank you. Sometimes co-host of this podcast, Rebecca Kopelman, and I are calling her Count Dugalic or Count Dracula. Okay. Count Ducala. I like it. Because the way they were saying it, we were calling her Count Dracula, but saying Count Ducala. Because we couldn't figure out, is there a D in there? Is there a G in there? Either way, apparently she was someone that Jan Jensen identified in the portal as well and really tried to get the 6-year senior. Well, she really came back to haunt the Hawkeyes on Sunday because she had 22. And when you pair her with the Betts sisters, because I do think Sienna Betts, the number 2 recruit in last year's recruiting class, and of course a true freshman for Corey Close this year, like Sienna Betts is still getting her sea legs under her. She's still growing into her body. She doesn't have the same high IQ post play that her sister does. That's fine. She's 18 years old. Her sister's a senior. I'm not going to question that. But if it was just the Betts sisters in the front court, I would say a team like UConn, a team like Texas that has depth in the front court, they would be able to maneuver and negotiate around that. But when you add Count Dracula, whatever we're calling her, into the equation, someone who has not only the high IQ to get to the rack and post up against a Hannah Stolke or an Ava Hayden, but she also can stretch the floor. And I mean, the floater was really nice on Sunday. That's where I say, okay, UCLA, I see you, I raise you, I put you in my Final Four, because that is where they are separating themselves, is that depth in the front court. The fact that they, at one point in time, the shortest player on the floor for them against the Hawkeyes was 5'11" Kiki Rice, much maligned on this podcast as well. We're sorry, Kiki. Not our fault. You were in an ESPN original production as a sophomore with Caitlin Clark. But besides Kiki, who was 5'11", no player on the floor was shorter than 6'3", Mitch. And we talked about the length of Tennessee. The length of UCLA has gone way under the radar this year. It will not come March.
Yeah, I mean, with UCLA, like it's not just the size for me. It's also, they have two of the things you want. They have the size, but they also have 3-point shooting. They have 5 players on their team this year shooting above 34% from 3-point land. Gianna Neepkins, transfer from Utah, is having a 50-40-90 season. I think Kiki Rice is statistically having her best season. Charlize Legger-Walker, transfer from Washington State, who was out all last season with an injury. She's come back this year, and she's played really well and given them something. I think they have all the pieces. Now that there is a little bit of concern in the depth. I think they have like 2 really strong players who come off the bench, so a 7-man rotation, so to speak. But it's a really good 7. And when you have Lauren Betts and you have all these really good pieces around her, I think you're going to be okay.
So Mitch's Final Four as of February 1, headed into the stretch run of the regular season, is UConn, UCLA, Louisville, and Michigan. And my Final Four on February 1st, UConn, UCLA, LSU, and the Texas Longhorns. I alluded to the Sooners covering the spread. Mitch had a 1-2 week at making money with Mitch. Better than 0-3 last week. Let's make some money this week, Mitch. Who do we have in this week's 3-pack of picks?
Yeah, I just want to tack on real quick. The thing about Texas and Oklahoma today, Texas did get some 3-pointers today, which is not something they usually do. They shot 5 of 11 from 3-point land. Jordan Lee, Justice Carlson, Leah Crumpball making some, and kind of backs up my thesis about Oklahoma. They are living and dying with the play of Aaliyah Chavez. Chavez today, 3 of 13 from the floor, and they lost. So I believe that, that 32% mark is kind of the difference so far in Oklahoma. Less than 32% from Aaliyah Chavez, probably not going to win. Above, you got a good chance. Today was not her day.
Roll the tape from last week. What was that stat too? It's like 14-4 or something like that when she does shoot more than 32% from the floor.
Yeah, I have it in the story that I wrote about Aaliyah Chavez over at USA Today. But there is a very big discrepancy in. And
she looked lost, by the way. And also, I would like to make sure I do note they are going to make the Elite Eight. I believe Aaliyah Chavez will shoot more than 32% from the floor through the first 3 games of the NCAA tournament. But with that said, yeah, I mean, she just looked so perplexed and just, out of sorts. I still don't understand. While I respect the fact that she is their bus driver and she is who they all defer to, Reagan Beers is still on this team. And it just shocks me that she's become a supporting cast member in her final season in Norman. It just really surprises me.
Yeah, so here's the stat. When Aaliyah Chavez shoots 32% or better from the floor, Oklahoma is now 13-0 this season. When she shoots below 32%, they are now 4-5, and 4 of those losses were to quad. They were in quad 1 games against nationally ranked teams: UCLA, LSU, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and now Texas.
Unreal. Are they in this week's Making Money with Mitch picks?
They are not.
Okay. Sorry, Oklahoma. I tried.
We are going to start off in SEC country, though. This is Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on SEC Network Plus. I don't know why this game is on streaming only, because it's a ranked-on-ranked matchup between 2 really good teams and some superstar level talent. But we got Vanderbilt at Kentucky, and I am taking Kentucky to cover the slim margin of 1.5 points as the home favorite.
I like that, Mitch. And Kentucky, of course, was a winner on Sunday, 93-73 over Arkansas.
Tiani Key is back, and they won comfortably, and also had a big game from Claire Strack. I think she had like 33 points and 15 rebounds. So
Vanderbilt also winners, for what it's worth, on Sunday, although they were trailing by 15 in the first half against Florida up in Nashville, 82-66. We're just going to blame them in Tennessee starting slow based off of the snow and schools closed and there's no power. Like, we're going to like throw it out. Like that's what it is. But I do think, I do think that this is one that's basically a pick 'em. So I like rolling with the home favorite. So who do we have at number 2?
Number 2, we are sticking on Thursday night. This is a after dark game. Ohio State is at Washington, 9 p.m. Eastern on Peacock. Washington, while they took a loss today to Illinois, they had won 5 games in a row. And they are 4.5-point underdogs at home to Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State is as good as their record indicates.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I was curious. Like I said, I mean, I thought Nebraska gave them a run for the money at home today in a game that Lisa Bluter was on the call for what it's worth.
Oh, really? I didn't know she was doing a lot of games. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's doing at least one a month, doing the color commentary, and then one a month in studio.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State did get that win over TCU, but, like, I don't know. I look at some of their other wins, like, they beat Maryland. Okay, so is everybody else in the Big Ten at this point, right? And they did beat the Greenbrier 5 by 2 points back in November. Other than that, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, what their third best win is. I guess it's at Maryland. So TCU, Maryland, West Virginia. They got boat raced by Iowa. They got boat raced by UConn. And they got boat raced by UCLA. I guess not boat raced. They
got boat raced by Iowa. Having watched the game, they got boat raced. But, like, here's my thing. Like, if we're going to talk about bus drivers, like, who is the player for Ohio State when you need a bucket in a big game like that? Is it one of the Cambridge sisters, or like?
Yeah, I mean, without Cambridge, I think.
I was going to say, because without, everyone's favorite villain, Cody McMahon, like, I don't know who the face of Ohio State basketball is. Not that you need one, because as we've already discussed, Louisville and Duke are doing just fine without a marquee player. But I don't know. I think as, like, we progress through Big Ten play, I do think you need that player in crunch time who, if you need a bucket, they can go get a bucket.
Like, Ohio State is another team. I mean, this literally happened to them last year. Like, they're a team, I think, that is going to get like a number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament and lose at home in the second round, which happened to them
because they'll draw like Richmond or
Georgia, or like whoever the 5 seed is, in their quadrant. Maybe it's Kentucky, maybe it's Ole Miss, somebody like that.
That would be saucy.
Yeah, who gets one over on them? Oh yeah, Ole Miss, Cody McMahon. So, anyways, I'm taking Washington to cover the 4.5 as the home dog.
And you've been on the Washington train for a while now.
I like Washington.
Yeah. Shout out to the Huskies, man.
Cynthia Sellers, I think, just had a 38-point game.
She did.
Yeah, so maybe that was in their win over Maryland, if memory serves.
Yes, it was. Yes, because then they lost to Illinois the next time out. And one more from the Big Ten to round us out, Mitch.
Yeah, this is maybe the Big Ten game of the year. UCLA.
Although we thought today would be the Big Ten game of the year too, and we saw what happened.
Yeah, UCLA at Michigan. This is Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern on Fox. UCLA is the road favorite at 5.5 points, and I like that margin. I think this is like a 2 or 3 possession win for UCLA. I think Michigan will push them, but ultimately, I think as much as I like Michigan, they do not have a Lauren Betts. They don't really have a player, I think, that can match up with her. And, UCLA, like I said before, really good 3-point shooting team. So I think UCLA will get this one done on the road to stay unbeaten in Big Ten play.
Yeah, the fact that this one's in Ann Arbor is probably the only reason I think the spread is what it is. Because I'm telling you, Mitch, and again, I'm biased as an Iowa fan, but it felt like they were playing a different sport at different junctures of this game. Not to the similar. I would say similar to UConn in the first 5 minutes for those who watched the UConn Tennessee game. It was kind of like that where you were just like, oh boy, here comes the avalanche. To be fair, I also was texting with Rebecca and I was like, there were also moments where UCLA had 5 straight possessions with a turnover. And I was like, Iowa can beat them. But I think you just see the length and the imposing figure that is Lauren Betts and the rest of this Bruins squad. And you just, I don't know. That or Addie Deal was still shook about, starting in her hometown still after starting in her hometown for her first career start on Thursday. And I get that they, they're still trying to learn to play life without Taylor McCabe the rest of the way.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that was any reason to back down from the Bruins, and I don't think Iowa did. It also didn't help that they made 3 3-pointers until garbage time. But I just kept sitting there and I'm like, I've seen Iowa play at that level, mostly when they're home. And so I think Michigan can play at a level where they're competitive with UCLA, but ultimately, I would not bet against UCLA. And now that we've done that, and now that I've put Corey Close in my Final Four, that probably means that they're going to lose to Michigan on Sunday night because that's just the way things go. To recap, folks, Mitch's 3 picks this week in Making Money with Mitch. We're going to bounce back. We're going to get back to a 3-0 slate after going 22-11 throughout the course of the regular season. He has Kentucky, a 1.5-point favorite, home against Vandy on Thursday. Washington covering a 4.5-point spread at home against Ohio State Thursday night. And UCLA, 5.5-point favorites on the road against the Michigan Wolverines. It is time for Last Call. Any of the storylines that we may have missed throughout the course of today's program. Want to give, first and foremost, before we get into the WNBA and unrivaled storylines, Mitch, a couple notes from the college ranks. Number 1, I know this was producer Dimitri's favorite story of the week because Alabama's play certainly wasn't. Clemson raising NIL money, another name that I'm going to butcher. They flew over. It's Rusney. How do you pronounce her last name? Augustinate. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Yes.
Okay. Rusney Augustinate's mom.
I think that's right.
They flew her mom over from Lithuania with all of their NIL, not all of their NIL money, but they pooled their NIL money together to surprise one of their own, fly her mom in for a game to visit her. We thought it was one of the best stories of the week here at the Women's Basketball Podcast. So be remiss if I didn't lead Last Call with that feel-good story.
You know who else thought it was a feel-good story? Apparently, Mr. Marcus Lemonis, who I believe is a very rich man. He's been on Let's Make a Deal and The Fixer, and I believe owns Camping World and Bed Bath & Beyond. So he jumped into the comment section on Clemson's Instagram of Rusney's mom, coming and greeting them and stuff, and said, I'd like to do a $150,000 sponsorship deal with the women's basketball team at Clemson, which is pretty cool. So, so Clemson getting some more NIL money.
Man, because, can Sean Poppy lose these days? Come on now.
Pretty cool.
They got the number 3 recruiting class in the country next year.
Yeah, life is good for Sean Poppy. 2-0 week. They're working their way, making sure they're staying on the right side of the bubble. Yeah.
Little old Clemson. We love to see it.
Old Clemson.
Another character who we love to see succeed would be our friend Audie Crooks of Iowa State, who in 89 career games has surpassed the 2,000-point plateau. Walking bucket. We talk about her all the time. Shout out to Audie Crooks. Iowa State, again, 18-5, finding their way back the right side of the bubble, hopefully finding a way to host games at Hilton Coliseum this March. And one more note from the college ranks from me before I hear any from you, Mitch, and then we get to the pros. We had 3 mid-major buzzer beaters on Saturday. Vermont with Nicola Pried, Fullerton with Christina Jones, and then JU with Kamaya Bowman. Turnaround J over Austin P. Austin P, by the way, they lost to UNF with 10 seconds to go on Thursday night, and then they lost at the buzzer to JU on Sunday. They were second in the ASUN standings. sorry, governors. Like, I feel bad for you. But yeah, shout out to all of our buzzer beaters. We almost had one in East Lansing that would have set the world on fire. Anything else from the college ranks, Mitch, that we may have missed that you want to hit on before we get to WNBA and Unrivaled?
Taylor Shurik from Montana State had a triple-double of 31 points, 12 rebounds, and 11 steals in a win over Portland State. I think Montana State is going to win the Big Sky and go to the NCAA tournament, so she will be a player to watch once we get to March Madness. Also, by the time this podcast is out, I will probably have a story posted at USA Today about Vanessa Blair-Lewis, the head coach of George Mason, who I caught up with at Davidson this past week. George Mason 10-0 in the A10 for the first time ever. Won at Davidson for just the second time ever. They're on a 9-game win streak. Story's basically just about how Vanessa Blair-Lewis has won everywhere she's been. Mount St. Mary's, Bethune-Cookman, and now George Mason. She is somebody that is probably going to be a candidate for a Power 4 job this year. And notably, I did not know this until I read it in George Mason's game notes. She is the longest tenured Black woman head coach in Division I, because she started her head coaching career in the 90s at Mount St. Mary's, her alma mater, when she was like 24 years old. So she's been doing this for like 27 years now.
That's awesome. And yeah. Given that I'm marrying into a pseudo George Mason fan family, they love the George Mason shout outs. Kevin was showing me his uncle was, who's the alumni. Shout out to Uncle Scott. He's the president of the Alumni Association at George Mason. So they were at the game on Saturday, and I informed him. I said, they're actually really good. And he's like, really? And I was like, oh yeah, like they're very good. 10-0. Go That's Patriots, right. Baby. Go Patriots. Also of note, I saw the tweet percolating around the men's college basketball space of, Ben McCollum, Grant McCaslin. It doesn't matter where you're winning. If you're a AD hiring a coach this cycle, you should probably just hire someone who wins. And, I just wanted to point that out with your note about George Mason and a couple other mid-major schools that we like to give love to here on the pod that, if you're an athletic director, which I was informed this week, Mitch, we do have some ADs who sometimes will pop in and listen to what hot seat Mitch is talking about. Yeah, I was informed of that this week. Yeah, so just a thought. Go find somebody who wins, and who can build a culture, and maybe you want to use that. So
I put in my Vanessa Blair-Lewis story. I kind of started it off with when Kurt Cignetti was hired in Indiana from James Madison, he said, "It's simple. I win. Google me." Vanessa Blair-Lewis could make the same argument if she wanted to. And yeah, maybe if you're a Power 4 coach, maybe you should just hire someone who's won everywhere they've been.
Yeah, worked out for Indiana pretty darn well. All right, so it is time to shift focus here for the final few minutes of the program to the pros, because here at the Women's Basketball Podcast, we do talk all things women's hoops, not just college. Even though we are in February, we are amidst the best time of the year when it comes to college basketball. Caitlin Clark was just on the NBC broadcast. We are recording this podcast on Sunday, February 1st. In part of her analysis pregame prior to the Lakers-Knicks game on NBC, she said that her belief is that a new deal will get done between the WNBA and the WNBPA here in the next few weeks. There is a meeting set for Monday in New York City between Kathy Engelbert, several owners who are expected to attend, and some players who, some of whom were playing in Unrivaled in Philly, including Kelsey Plum, and then they will stay up there in the Northeast. No word on whether or not Caitlin will be at the negotiations. As I said to more than one person here in the last few hours, Caitlin, unfortunately, as Mitch saw firsthand at Team USA, can't really say where she is because there are a lot of people who want to know where Caitlin is at all times in a creepy sort of way. But it'll be interesting to see if she stays in New York for these meetings, because she is not on the leadership council, even if she is the most famous player playing in the league right now. And so I have echoed for weeks now, Mitch, that I agree with Caitlin. I do think that a deal is going to have to get done, especially when you've got the league rolling out the calendar, when you've got the Portland Fire out here releasing their new jerseys and everything is set to launch and they're hiring people. I think that even if it is just agreeing to stay put with the same terms as the previous CBA and kicking the can further down the road in order to ensure you get the expansion draft completed prior to the start of free agency, which is giving you ample time prior to the draft in April. I think that there is going to be some form of a deal done. Now, if you kick the can further down the road, we're going to go through the same song and dance next year. But I think people would be okay with that, knowing that you're bringing 2 new teams in and just ensuring that you have everything else going status quo. That is going to be accepted in the here and now.
I think that the WNBA, the owners, would like to kick the can down the road to next season and just keep status quo. I think the players, though, they want to see a new deal get done, and I think they're going to fight for it. One of the reasons I think that is because, as we've talked about, a lot of players structured their contracts in a way to make them free agents for this upcoming offseason, in the hopes that we would have a new CBA and they would see their salaries take a big jump. Now, could you just sign a 1-year deal and then do this again next year? You could. I just don't think all the players are going to be on board with that. I think they're going to want to see a new deal. But ultimately, I do agree with you one way or another. I just find it hard to believe that we'll miss games. I don't think we're going to have the season pushed back. I don't think we're going to miss any games.
Are we going to be working OT during March Madness? Because a lot of this is going to be happening. Yeah. Oh, and also there's a Team USA camp during the month of March too, folks. Yes, I think that the month of March is truly going to be madness if you're a women's basketball fan. But at the same time, I think everything is going to be set by the time the draft rolls around the week after the Final Four.
And for those reasons, like because of the timeline we're on, because we have March Madness coming up, because we have 2 expansion drafts, or I guess an expansion draft with 2 teams to do, and because there's a Team USA camp and a qualifying tournament coming up, I think it's crucial that they get this done in February, because then you're like, it's just going to be messy and busy in March and April to try to get this done in time.
So let me bring it back, as all things do, to the Caitlin Clark of it all. I don't think she goes on NBC and says that out of pocket. I think that whether that is her and her camp projecting their message, or if she did converse with Nneka Ogwumike, the PA president, if she did converse with Kelsey Plum and Brianna Stewart and the rest of Nafisa Collier, who is expected to be in New York for these meetings on Monday, nothing that Caitlin says isn't said without intention, to be fair. And that's also as somebody who was watching that pregame show. And all I could think was Maria Taylor, Carmelo Anthony, and Reggie Miller were like little children talking to Caitlin because they were just filled with such joy. And like the thing with Caitlin that people don't realize is like she is literally like a little troll. Like, she's like a normal 24-year-old who just wants to like have fun and talk ball. And the way she broke down Luka Doncic was arguably better than any other analyst I saw on that pregame show. Yeah. And how he, just basically takes on blocks and he is okay taking pain as he goes through the lane. Like, I don't know. The way she described it, I was like, damn, that's smarter than any basketball analyst that I've heard on this program up to this point. And so to that end, that's where, she's thinking up here and like everybody else is down here. She wouldn't say that unless she truly feels that, yes, a deal is imminent or that her words would help carry that meeting tomorrow.
Yes, I believe that was a message that was crafted. Like you said, Caitlin's pretty smart. She knew, I'm going on NBC. This has happened with the WNBA. I'm going to be asked about this. I need to have an answer. And now whether she talked with, her people, her camp, her agent, whatever, or with the WNBPA representatives about, hey, what should I say on this national platform? One way or another, she had a conversation with somebody about crafting what her response was going to be, knowing that she was going to be asked about that.
And hey, credit to NBC, as I just, slapped all over your analysts. I appreciate that NBC gave Caitlin the platform. Yes, I mean, look, it's going to help their ratings, but also the fact that they didn't shy away from the topic. They did address it, which I don't know if in a previous world, that would have been a talking point. They would have continued the softball questions.
I like how NBC just pivoted really hard from, Michael Jordan's not coming back, but we're going to have Caitlin Clark on.
Speaking of the greats, listen, the fact that we're talking the greats and we got Michael Jordan and Caitlin Clark. Hey, there we go. Like, it's the world we live in, man. Enjoy it. Love it. All right. Wrapping up. Unrivaled went to Philly. They apparently raised more than $2 million in this road trip, this barnstorming road trip to Philly. Over 21,000 people in attendance. Marina Mabrey absolutely ruined Kalia Copper's homecoming to her home city of Philadelphia. Dropped 47 points, was 10 of 11 from 3-point range. I stopped counting when she was 6'7". Har, har, har. LOL. Truly though, she was 6 of 7, and I was just like, okay, like Marina Mabrey is about to just like annihilate COD friends. I liked the idea of moving Unrivaled to different cities. Nafisa Collier and Alex, her husband, have said that they are already working towards next Unrivaled season in 2027 to continue taking the show on the road for at least one weekend out of their calendar year. Oh, so it's Raleigh.
No, I want it to be.
Maybe it could be. Maybe it should be. I'm just saying. I was going to ask you, Mitch. What are your thoughts? Because the ironic part of this is, what is Project B supposed to be? Supposed to be a barnstorming tour of all-star games, and we're all praising and just throwing it out there. I'm the league and the style and the game in which it's played, very, very different. But it does show that if you bring women's basketball to a city that doesn't normally have women's basketball, people will come.
I think they should continue to take it to cities that don't have WNBA teams but support women's sports. I think the Triangle is one of those places. So PNC Arena or Reynolds Coliseum or whatever. I think that would be awesome. I think it would be a success and do well. The PWHL came here last year and that did really well. Project B, by the way, people paying attention to that or rooting for that to succeed. Have you seen what's going on with Live Golf lately?
Mm-mm.
But
I do want to note that the president of the WNBPA is signed and allegedly going to be playing in it. So,
okay,
I'm with you. I'm with you, Mitch.
I remain skeptical of if they ever play a game.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's get out of here. On that note, look, a lot of great storylines. Truly a super Sunday in women's basketball. We're excited to record this show, not just because Mitch has a loaded slate of games he's going to rattle off here this week. And so we're not only excited that we had to record Sunday night because of that, but because we got to immediately react to all the great games we saw to kick off the month of February in women's basketball. Mitch, tomorrow you've got the K-Yow Play for K game in the Triangle. Where else are you headed this week?
Yeah, so we got UNC at NC State Monday night. I'll be at that. I'm heading to Charlotte on Wednesday for a presser that the Carolina Panthers are having about flag football. They're partnering with a conference for a women's college flag football league. On Thursday, Clemson is at UNC, so I'll see Sean Poppy and friends in Chapel Hill. And then weekend is TBD.
Very nice. I have North Florida and Stetson on Thursday, which, by the way, your weekly ASUN update. Florida Gulf Coast has lost a lot of regular season games. Not a lot.
Yeah.
By a lot, I mean they've lost, though. So,
might have a year where FGCU doesn't win the ASUN, right?
It would be the first time in, I believe it's 8 years, that Florida Gulf Coast would not represent the ASUN if they were to not win the tournament in March. That will take place here in Jacksonville with your girl on the call.
That's right.
Eastern Kentucky undefeated in league play. And so the Freihofer gang, as I like to call them, Liz Freihofer is their center and arguably their best player, leading the way. And shout out to Coach Todd, because he's like the godfather of Kentucky basketball. If you know, you know, up in the high school scenes up there.
Okay.
So excited to see them in action in Jacksonville in a couple of weeks. And then lacrosse season is going to start down here. And so JU opens its season on Saturday. Support all the women's sports, especially women's basketball and the Women's Basketball Podcast. We appreciate you guys. He is Mitch. I am Mia, saying we will catch you next week.
Deuces.